Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Maya Conscious Living. Today, we are going to be talking about something that has been very trendy lately, let's say. I've been seeing it all over social media, the internet, you name it, I've seen it there, and that is living in alignment with your highest self. And I want to talk about this today because what does that even mean? What are we aligning to? What is our highest self? How do we do this? This has been a journey that I've been on, so I'm excited to share. And yeah, before we get started, for those of you who are new here, I'm Gabrielle. I'm the founder of Maya Conscious Living. I am a mindfulness coach, yoga teacher, meditation facilitator, and sound healer. And over the course of my journey of moving from working in corporate fashion, living my dream life, to letting all of that go and going on a journey of self-discovery, this journey led me to the Eastern Hemisphere, where I've now studied numerous different ancient wisdom practices, from yoga and the Vedas to Tantra to meditation of all sorts, and mindfulness. And along this journey, I discovered that my purpose is to be of service and to lift other people up. So that is what I'm doing by sharing wisdom that I have gained throughout this journey with all of you. So let's get into it. Today we are talking about living in alignment with your highest self. And what does that mean? Well, before we get into it any further, I just want to say that living in alignment with your highest self simply means living in alignment with your truest self. And the natural next question would be, if I'm not living in alignment with my truest self, what am I living in alignment with? Because I thought just being myself is true. And yeah, that's partially true that you are yourself and no one can take that away from you. But we often don't live aligned to our truest self because throughout life, from the time that we're born until wherever you are in life now, you've been picking up things along the way, along your journey. And anytime we have an authority figure, society, your school that you went to, sports that you played, your culture, your family, your friend group, all of those things influence you, and they start to give you different values to live by, values that society or that system lives by. You start to adopt those because they become the norms around you. And this becomes a filter that you see the world through. And you think that those are the way that it needs to be because that's what's normal for you. And this develops patterns in our lives, habits, it shapes how we make decisions. And so it's very important because chances are the values that you've gathered throughout your life, don't all equate to the values that you truly want to live your life by. And I'll give you some examples. So for example, when I first moved to Italy, I moved to Italy when I was roughly 20 to study fashion. And I hadn't lived anywhere outside of the US. I'd only been outside of the US a handful of times, not even a handful, I think twice, to Mexico and on a cruise when I was a child. So I hadn't really been exposed to many other cultures, true, like in their origin cultures, because of course in the US we have many cultures. But I moved to Italy, and one of the things that stood out to me was how different the approach to food is. And it's not just that the cuisines are different, it's the whole approach to food in general. So as an American, I grew up snacking, and that's very normal to have snack food that's packaged, thinking Cheez-Its, Gushers, fruit by the foot, Annie's little gummy bear thingies, chips, popcorn, all of that. It was very normal to come home from school or in between classes and have a snack and eat this packaged food, or for dinner to just basically grab a frozen pizza and throw it in the oven. And for me, that was like a perfectly normal dinner to have. And when I moved to Italy, that didn't exist. So the snack aisle was about this big, and it had maybe a few flavors of different potato chips and a few flavors of Pringles and nuts. And that is basically the snack aisle because people don't eat as much packaged food. They do have packaged food. I'm not going to say Italy doesn't have it because they have like packaged sweets more often, I would say, because they eat those for breakfast. Like kids eat them for breakfast, like packaged croissants, basically. So they have it, but it's different. It's not on the level of the United States. And that's because the value of the food in Italy is that it is quality. You know, they will take their time to make a meal that is from whole foods, whole ingredients, and put together something that is quality. Even if it's a snack, they cut up fruit, you know, you have your afternoon espresso with a nice like sandwich or pastry that's quality. And your dinner for sure is not a frozen pizza. It's going to be at least like pasta is considered sometimes like the easy thing to make at home. It's very different because in the US, the value is more concerned about convenience. And it's not to say one is right and one is wrong, but it might be that you grow up in a culture where the value is convenience, but you value health. And, you know, convenience usually undermines health because it's not usually the healthiest foods that are the most convenient. So if you value health, but you grow up in a society where convenience culture is the main culture around the food, then there's an alignment issue there. So you're out of alignment. That's just one very simple example, but it can be bigger things in your life as well. Like, what does the meaning of success mean to you? If you live in a culture where success means, or even just your family defines it this way, that success is getting a corporate job and working your way up the ladder and, you know, getting into the VP position or whatever, and your true value of success is like starting a family and building, you know, a relationship of some sort and like having that as your main priority in life and living by the success definition of this culture or of your family, but your real value is being diminished there because you don't have time to build a relationship or spend as much time with your family as you would truly like to, then, you know, there's a misalignment there, and that can cause a lot of distress in someone's life. That's why we see people get to their dream jobs or like work their way up all the way through the corporate ladder and they're unhappy because they look around and they see that that wasn't the life they actually wanted to live truly in their core. Instead, they lived their life according to society or their family or their friends' values and not their own. And this I learned personally in my own life because from what I thought I wanted, I worked towards that. I moved to Italy, studied fashion, went to one of the best fashion schools in the world, got a job in Berlin, made my life in Europe as I'd always dreamed of doing it, working in fashion, had this awesome job and, you know, handsome boyfriend, beautiful apartment, all of the stuff that I thought that I wanted. And when I looked around one day when I was roughly 27, I believe, I wasn't happy. And I felt this vague sense of discontentment and that there was more to life and that something wasn't right here. And if I kept living my life like this for the next 5 or 10 years, that I wasn't going to be happy. And so I changed everything. I quit my job, broke up with my boyfriend. I moved to Istanbul. I became a nomad and I went in search of what was actually going to make me happy. And it's not to say that I went in search and it was all like a romantic fairy tale. I found it, blah, 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 and lived happily ever after. It definitely wasn't like that. It was an up and down battle of looking inward and getting to know my truth so that I could live by it, which is a very uncomfortable path to go down because you have to look at your darkness as much as your light. So it's definitely not easy, but it is 100% worth it because I can tell you today, I wake up every day feeling very joyful. I feel very content and I know what I'm working towards. Even if I haven't reached all of my goals yet, I know that I'm in the right direction and that I've narrowed it down to the path that I want to walk. And of course, that path can turn and change. But right now, this path feels aligned for me, and that's what matters. So when we talk about living by your truth or living in alignment with your truth. It means exactly that. It means discovering what you value in life. What are your core values? And then aligning your life to them, making your decisions based around those. So your core values become sort of like the compass for your map of life. And they, maybe it doesn't just tell you like head directly north, but at least it narrows it down and it says, okay, between north and northeast, walk this direction and see what happens. And that eliminates the whole other side of the compass, which you don't need to walk. And that is amazing because life is not a linear path. So there's going to be some turns and twists, and your values can change over time and you have to realign. But once you know what your values are and the process of tuning in and checking in with yourself and your values, you have all the tools to keep following your compass. And that is so important. To give you another example of what it looks like when your values change, this is something that I've been dealing with in my life right now. So over the last 4 years since I became a nomad, I have been living in this bliss of being a nomad, traveling around, moving countries, sometimes every month, sometimes I stay for 4 months, sometimes I stay for half a year. It depends. And I've loved it. I loved the freedom of it. I wanted location freedom. That's what I was craving and valuing because I wanted to see the world. I wanted to be exposed to different cultures, and I did it. But little by little, this feeling of discontentment that I used to feel crept back in. So I had to look at it again. And it wasn't on the level of last time nearly, but because I was familiar and had this awareness, this self-awareness, I knew that there was something not quite aligned anymore and that I wasn't getting as much joy out of moving around all the time. And I started to look at that and I thought, okay, well, what do you value now that is not in alignment with the way that you're living? And I started to think about what I place importance on in life and where I am in my life now. And I realized that when I first started being a nomad, I was newly single, just out of a long-term relationship, and I didn't have the priority or the value of getting into another relationship. I didn't care to. It was not of importance to me. Now that I've gone on this journey and found, my way, I am ready to share that again with someone. And so I realized that the reason why I was not liking moving around every couple of months was that you can't build deep relationships with people, not deep enough to the level that you build a relationship that could be, a life partnership. Or so I thought at that time. So I started thinking, okay, I need to start putting down roots. And I realized there was other things leading me to want to put down roots. I'm ready to stop working online as much and start working with people in person because I enjoy that. And living abroad, it's very difficult because of work laws and all of that. It's very easy to work online as a digital nomad, but it's not as easy to work with people one-on-one or group settings in person. So that was another thing I was craving. And so I realized that my values had shifted and that I needed to change my decision-making and realign my life so that I could fill those needs. And that doesn't mean that I needed to change my life overnight and say, okay, now I'm going to stay put and I'm not going to move around anymore. I needed time to get to that point, and I'm working towards that at the moment. But I opened myself up to dating again, and I opened myself up to places where I could work with people in person, which is why I went to Sri Lanka to teach yoga in person. So I made some slight shifts. I ended up going on dates, meeting someone who's amazing. The fact that I was still moving around, wasn't ideal, but it didn't scare him away either. And that was a limiting belief I had set for myself earlier, that I would never find a partner until I settled down. But here I am building a relationship before settling down. With that being said, I have made the decision to settle down at the end of this summer. So yeah, it's an exciting change. And it all came from me bringing this awareness to my values changing and making decisions that aligned with it. Sorry, I needed to move because the sun was coming through the window. And so yes, so that's another example of how your values change throughout your life and how you need to continuously align yourself to your truth and what your truth is in this moment and for this phase of your life. So it's a never ending thing that you're going to be doing over and over again. But once you learn how to do it, you're going to be able to do it with so much ease and so much grace that, it doesn't feel like you're really doing anything. It's just being reflective. So how do you do this? How do you start to live a life that's true to you and to your core values? Well, of course, you need to know what your core values are in order to align to them. You cannot align to something that you don't know what it is. That it's impossible. How are you aligning to something that you don't know what you're aligning to? It doesn't make any sense. So the first step is to figure out what your core values are. And when I say core values, I just mean the things that are the most important to you. And really to you, not to your parents, not to your partner, not to your friends, not to the culture you grew up in, the society that you grew up in. What is most important to you? And so in order to do that, there's different ways that you can go about discovering your core values. But when we boil it down to it, it comes to being mindful and starting to see the decision making that you make and seeing if it feels good and if it's aligned to you. And if you feel like you don't have a relationship with yourself enough yet to know what feels good to you, then the first step is simply building the relationship with yourself, creating a mindfulness practice so that you can start being present with yourself in the moments. And that's how you get to know yourself. That's how you build a relationship with yourself, because yourself is deep inside of you. It's not the persona you put on to the world. It's the truth that does not waver within the core of your being. And you get to know that by doing mindful activities. So that means doing anything fully present. And you can do this with reflection, shadow work, journaling, any sort of activity. These are all mindful activities, by the way, where you are spending time looking inside of you. But the most popular way of doing this, and the most effective way, I would say, is creating a daily meditation practice. And that does not need to be like 30 minutes of meditating. It can be 5 minutes. The most important thing is that you do it every single day. If meditation is something you're completely new to, I have tons of guided meditations on the channel. So you have to go inward. You have to look at your shadows and your light and really dig into that to see what matters to you. And then once you start to get a sense of this, you can then, there's plenty of lists of values out in the world, and you can find a list and you just intuitively go through this list and you see the words that pop out to you. Maybe it's community, maybe it's adventure, maybe it is health. There's endless value words. And so you start to look at these lists and you can narrow it down like, okay, I think, here's 10 words that I feel connected to on some level. Then you need to use your discretion looking through those words and say, okay, why do I feel connected to this word? Where is it stemming from? What does it come from? And then you trace it back to where this came from. It could be a memory in your childhood. It could be something someone said to you once, a club you were in, whatever. Or you just feel you've always felt attached to it. And once you figure out where it comes from, you have to ask yourself, okay, now that I know where this comes from, is it something I truly value, or is it something that was given to me that is no longer mine to hold? Because sometimes we think we value something, but really it was just our conditioning that made us feel this way. So it's good to just look at it. Sometimes through our conditioning and our experiences, we have been given the values that we truly value, and that's amazing. But sometimes there's the misalignment, so we have to bring our awareness to it. Once you've done that, you can start to narrow it down to the ones that are the most important to you. So start putting them in order. Okay, if I had to choose between this and this, I would choose this, for example. And once you have your top 3 to 5, I would say no more than that, because, the next step is it's not, you don't want to have to do 10 of them. So then you have to write your definition for what that means, because we could have the same word And it could mean something completely different to me than what it means to you. So you have to make your definition for it. Once you make your definition for all of your words, then you create your value statement. And this value statement basically is you putting in the present tense. Even if you're not living by these values yet, you're putting them in the present tense, saying, I am the type of person who values this because of X, Y, and Z, enter your definition, and this, and you do it for all of your values, because this signals to your brain that you're already living in alignment with these, because our brain can't tell the difference between the truth and us just telling it something. So if we tell it, I'm living in alignment this way, it will already start to align our decision making easier with living in that way. So that's one little trick that you can do to start living in alignment with your values, as soon as you get to know what they are and define them and create your value system. Then, of course, there's more ways that you can start to live in alignment. I've created a whole course on how to live in alignment with your values. I walk you through how to discover them, and then how to take an audit of if you're living by them or not, and then how to align your life to them. And then, of course, the ongoing practice of living according to your values, living in alignment with your values forever, basically, because it is a never-ending process. If that's something you're interested in, I've put the link in the bio. If you are ready to start living by your values and live in alignment with your truth, I highly recommend checking it out. It's gotten great feedback. Yeah, a lot of people were shocked by how much work they actually had to do and how heavy the work is, because it seems simple. Like, everything in mindfulness is very simple, and so it's very easy to overlook. But simple things don't mean easy. A lot of times the simplest things are the most difficult to master, and that is mindfulness in a nutshell. And a lot of this is mindfulness. So it might seem simple, but if you're actually going to sit down and do the work that is given in the course, it will be difficult and it will be a little uncomfortable, because you're going to have to look deep inside you. And for a lot of people, it's looking at the places that you've been hiding from. That's, scary. But once you do it and you get to the other side, it can make such a world of a difference in your day-to-day life. So 100% worth doing it. So yeah, I think that is everything for today. Yeah, if you are interested in one-on-one mindfulness coaching or meditation help or yoga, you can definitely reach out to me. I'll put the links below on how to book a discovery call with me. I hope that this video gave you some insight on what it means to live in alignment with your highest self, which is just living in alignment with your truest self. And then as well, some insight on how to actually start doing that. Because, there's one thing to know something, but it's totally different to actually know how to implement it and then take the action. Because you can know everything and it doesn't mean it's going to change your life. The thing that actually changes your life is taking action. So think about all the podcasts you've ever listened to or self-help books that you've read, and how many times you've read something and you're like, yeah, that makes sense, but you've never made the change in your life. Don't make this one of those things. Really, if you're going to do one thing to help yourself, it is find your core values, because it will change your life almost immediately. So I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.